Welcome to Sitcom Showdown, a podcast that reviews classic sitcom episodes and inducts them into our very own Hall of Fame. As usual, one of us has chosen a sitcom episode and the other guy has no idea what it's going to be. Will they already know it? Will they love it? Can they be convinced that it's worthy? Let's find out on Sitcom Showdown. Welcome back to Sitcom Showdown for episode number 46. It's Jeff is here. And Steve, you're there giving me thumbs up?
Yep, I'm over here. It's good to be back.
It is a bit. Bit. Anyhow, I'll just launch straight into it and tell you what we're going to be watching tonight. Steve.
Go on then.
It's a sitcom from 2003/2004 called Swiss Tony. And
I've been waiting for this one to make an
have
appearance.
you? Oh, yeah. I mentioned it to you offhandedly a few months back, didn't I?
Well, we actually started watching an episode.
Oh, did you?
I think we got about 10 minutes in.
Yeah. But it was time pressures that meant we had to stop.
Yes, we had to shut it down.
Yeah. Yes, anyway, Swiss Tony had two complete series. The first had 6 episodes and the second had 10 episodes. We're going to be watching the Season 2 opener. Series 2, Episode 1, The Troubleshooter. And it was on BBC 3.
That's all right. I've got a question, but
Yeah, I'll plough
I think
on.
you'll probably cover it shortly. So
Will
I'll save
do.
it.
Yes. It's a sitcom about an eccentric second-hand car dealer, Swiss Tony, and his staff. And Swiss is, 50-something car dealer, and he thinks of himself as something of a playboy.
Yep.
And with his background as a sketch character that we'll go into, his catchphrase, more or less, was always comparing things to making love to a beautiful woman. So tying your shoelaces, Steve, is very much like making love to a beautiful woman, and then hilarity ensues.
Or driving, if you buy this car,
Yeah.
driving it'll be like making love to a beautiful woman.
Exactly. So, but even though he's married, and Swiss is pretty oblivious to his wife Ruth's unhappiness, and as we progress through the series over the 2 seasons, so to speak, it unfolds that Swiss is going through a bit of a midlife crisis. His head car salesman Jeff is a shambling alcoholic. His junior salesman Paul is young and timid and distracted. A receptionist Miranda is a complete party animal and has no respect for any of them. And they're all on a sinking ship. Before I go into the famous stars and the cast, I've got the background to watching. Now, you haven't got any background to watching this, have
No,
you?
we've already said 10 minutes.
Yeah. Had you watched?
But I was enjoying it.
Yeah. Had you watched the Fast Show?
No.
Oh man, you're okay, right? That makes things more difficult.
Which you mentioned in a recent episode.
Mm.
You said, and as we know, they were in the Fast Show, and I was going,
What?
I don't know.
Well, you've truly missed out because the Fast Show was fantastic. I think you'd enjoy it a lot. I watched my first, because I bought a Fast Show DVD years ago and I'd whipped it out and I gave it another watch for the first time in years. And then I was sort of looking up where the characters are now. And in my Googling, I found out that Swiss Tony had his own sitcom. And I thought, this is going to be...
This is amazing. No, you thought it was going to be bad.
I thought it was going to be awful. And anyway, so... Yes, luckily it was enjoyable, and I watched the whole lot in a couple of days, which is pretty easy to do. Only, you put in 3 hours a day, and you're pretty much done.
Oh yeah, everyone's got 3 hours a day to
watch Swiss Tony.
Yeah.
Of course. So moving into the famous stars and cast, Charlie Higson plays Swiss Tony, and usually depicts him wearing a very tidy, fashionable grey suit. Well, it was probably fashionable in the 80s, with his hair styled in this platinum blonde bouffant. And the character was created by Charlie Higson and Bob Mortimer from Vic and Bob, who we mentioned in episode 44 when we did House of Fools.
Oh, well, that's where...
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
But the character first appeared in a Vic and Bob sketch show called The Smell of Reeves and Mortimer. And then it was a bit of a mainstay of the Fast Show, if I've got that right. Charlie Higson's a pretty good actor, but he also writes a lot. So he wrote a screenplay in 94 with Lise Mayer of Young Ones fame.
Oh?
He's got a bunch of novels in the 1990s, and in the mid-2000s he wrote the series of Young Bond books for kids. So
would I be assuming too much to expect he co-wrote or wrote a bit of this?
He did co-write, yeah. But they get other writers in. So, for example, Gareth Roberts of Doctor Who fame wrote a few episodes with Charlie Higson and other people, and then they've got other writers.
Yep.
Yeah. So they bring in some decent writers. He was, of course, on the Fast Show and a lot of Vic and Bob shows, but was also a regular in Series 3 of Broadchurch, which I haven't watched. But in the early days, he was a decorator. It's a bit of a famous story that he and Paul Whitehouse were decorators. Anyway, they did up Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie's house.
Right.
Yeah. There's all sorts
That's not how they were discovered, was it?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't read too much more about it. But
They weren't joking around while they were painting or anything like
They
that?
could have been. I don't know. We'll have to ask Stephen Fry. So Matilda Ziegler plays Ruth, who you recognise when you watched it. Yeah.
She's in everything.
She is in everything. Ruth has recently left Swiss, so at the end of series 1, she leaves him. And
Hang on.
This is
his wife?
Yeah,
Right,
Ruth is his wife. She leaves him at the end of series 1. And she's having an affair with head salesman Jeff. But you know her from Mr. Bean, of course. She's been a regular in La Crise de Counterford.
Yes.
Which you also mentioned. And shows like Doctors, Too Much Sun, Harbour Lights, and EastEnders. And her IMDb telly listing is massive.
It's out of control.
Yeah. Moving on to Simon Day, who plays Jeff, the head car salesman. Like Matilda, he's been in a ton of stuff, but most notably The Fast Show and lots of other sketch shows like Bellamy's People, Alexei Sale, The Smell of Reeves and Mortimer. Massive IMDb. But other shows he's appeared in are Jonathan Creek, Casualty, Midsummer Murders, and Death in Paradise. And he was in the movie Shakespeare in Love, which won 7 Emmys. Right. As Boatman number 2 or something like that. So,
Boatman number 2.
But as far as I'm concerned, he's the star of Swiss Tony.
Right.
So,
He steals every scene, does he?
pretty much. I don't know what Charlie Higson would say about that, but bad luck for him. Rhys Thomas plays young Paul, the junior car salesman, and it was amazing to read his background. So he's a Rose d'Or winning, BAFTA-nominated English actor, comedian, writer, producer, and director. I've pinched all this from IMDb. And he's best known for starring in British comedy shows like The Fast Show, Star Stories, Sirens, Down the Line, Nathan Barley, and the critically acclaimed BBC music mockumentary series Brian Pern, which he wrote, created, starred in, produced, and directed.
Never heard of that
Probably
one.
did the theme tune. Yeah, I've not heard of it either. Anyway, but as a documentary director and producer, he won an Emmy and the Rose d'Or for Best Arts Documentary for the feature film Freddie Mercury, The Great Pretender, and he was nominated for a BAFTA in 2013 in the Breakthrough Talent category. Yeah.
Okay.
So he's got his own chops.
Yeah, so his career's taken a bit of a tangent.
Well, it's probably, gone on a bit of a rise.
Yep.
Yeah.
A tangent and then a rise.
Yes. So the guest star in this episode, who is the troubleshooter, is Olivia Colman, whose name I hear all the time, but I could never put a face to the name. I didn't know who she was. Have you heard of her?
No.
Oh.
No, well, what about her IMDb?
Yeah, well, get a load of this. She's won 3 BAFTAs, 2 Golden Globes, and has been nominated for an Academy Award, and a Primetime Emmy Award, and a Screen Actors Guild Award. So she's a bit of a heavyweight. She was in the movie Hot Fuzz, and on telly she's been in The Office, Black Books, Peep Show, Doctor Who, a star on one of the major stars of Broadchurch, and she gets a lot of regular TV work. So she's a pretty big name. And I haven't put in the actress who plays Swiss's mum.
Yep.
She does a great job. But I did put that it's produced by Jeffrey Perkins, who produced The Thin Blue Line and Father Ted. But also My Hero and Benidorm.
Oh, say what?
Yes. Do you know Benidorm at all, Steve? Just say yes so the listeners think we watch shows. Okay, cool. But you know My Hero, of course, with Thermo Man.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Right.
So on the one hand, you've got Father Ted and Thin Blue Line. On the other hand, he produced Thermo Man.
Well, it's a checkered history, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I secretly like My Hero. I think it's pretty good. And I rewatched all of that last year. All excruciating 6 series or whatever it was.
Yep. Even when he turned into...
James Dreyfus.
Yes.
Constable Goody.
Yep.
Yes. Anyway, that's all the information. Did I answer your question?
Well, no, because I'm still not sure why he's called Swiss Tony.
He's not Swiss. Yeah. I don't know. There's a story in there somewhere, but I don't know it and I can't repeat it.
So it could go back to the sketches.
It could do, yeah. Or it's just a facade he puts on. Like, the gangsters. You might have Serbian Pete or something like that. That sort of thing, I don't know.
The Swiss.
Yeah.
They strike fear into the heart of everyone.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe you like Swiss
They've
rolls.
never lost a war, probably.
Swiss rolls?
Swiss rolls? Yep. Swiss
Maybe.
chocky?
Maybe that was his morning tea of choice.
Swiss cheese? Yeah, could be. Anyway, we're going to run off and watch this, and then we'll come back and see if any of it makes sense.
All right.
I see it as a car. It's car everywhere. It's a car showroom.
You see, women don't want cars rammed down their throat. No, we need to change this showroom. We need to make it more welcoming for women, so they can come in, bring the kids, have a chat, read a magazine, grab a cup of coffee.
Yes, and perhaps even buy a car. No, I'm not going to put your bloody silly hat on, and I'm not going to change my showroom.
That's good.
It is?
Finally, you're showing some backbone. I was beginning to think you couldn't even captain a gravy boat. And I like what you're saying about the showroom. We don't need to make changes in the showroom.
Exactly.
We can make changes elsewhere, in personnel. OK, Jeff.
Look, love, we've had some fun this week with the zoo and all that. But I don't really think that you are qualified to tell us how to run a car showroom.
Jeff, you're in charge of the showroom.
Oh, yes, results!
And Swiss, you're going to be taking over Miranda's job.
What? No, wait a
Oi,
minute.
shut it! I'm the boss now. Now go and man them phones.
All right, we've just watched Series 2, Episode 1 of Swiss Tony, and it's an episode called The Troubleshooter. Swiss Tony and the team are gathered in the showroom, sort of near the front door, and their conversation quickly sets up the premise that Linda the Troubleshooter is coming in, and she's going to show them ways to help the business. So as a bit of background, at the end of Series 1, Swiss has lost his beautiful, big, glamorous showroom that he had, and he's now in this pokey place in a worse part of town. Anyway, Jeff is very much against getting a troubleshooter in, saying that if Swiss wants someone to point out the best way to run the showroom, leave it to him because he's got all the answers.
So he's not admitting that there's nothing wrong. He just
he's
thinks
saying,
he's got all the answers.
You're hopeless, Swiss. Let me take over.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much. And Swiss is telling them how to behave because he wants to give the best impression possible before Linda turns up, right? And basically that means hiding Jeff. So he's fussing around and telling them to line up in different ways, always trying to put Jeff at the back.
Yep.
But Linda then comes in from the back and says she's been quietly observing them for the last half hour and she's got their dynamics sussed. She's then asked them, if you were a pop group, what would you be? Go on, who is it? Bee Gees. Why? It's the first thing I thought of. But yeah, it's like straight away you get the impression she's very energetic, but she's a bit dotty, and she's sort of in entertainer mode, and obviously going too far, trying to put them at their ease.
That's what I had down here. Enthusiasm.
Yeah,
like she's drunk a few too many Red Bulls or something before she came through the door.
I reckon you're right. She must have done. But they all sit down, and Linda introduces herself properly and says she's turned around more businesses than Pavarotti's had hot dinners.
Yeah,
which is quite a few. So she then tries to...
Don't know what direction she's turned them in yet, but...
Oh, that's right, exactly. But she tries to establish her credentials, saying, here's some of my certificates, and then you can't see the motion Steve's making here. One by one, she picks up a certificate and slowly moves it across the eye line of the team who are all sitting in their seats in a semicircle. And then she'll pick up another and move it around and put that back. Pick up another one and move it around. And this goes on for a full 40 seconds before Jeff just explodes and says, all right, love, we get the picture. Yeah. And then Swiss tells Jeff off for being rude, but Linda contradicts him and says, no, Swiss, this is to see who's going to take initiative.
Yep.
And
Showing
asking
initiative.
questions. Yeah. It's all about asking questions. Who, what, where, why, how. Anyway, she says, the rest of you would have sat there for another 5 minutes looking at certificates. So Jeff's getting points there. This gives us an idea of what Linda's about, right? So over the episode, we see she gives them stupider and stupider tasks to do, until she unveils her master plan of role swapping them for a fortnight so they can all get an idea of what the other person's job and get a different perspective. And then she's going to come back after a fortnight and see how they got on. Now, I've jumped forward there a little bit. So,
well,
yeah. I'm going back, though. So to zoom through some of the exercises before we get to this, what I'm calling the main section with the role swapping. So she gets them to pretend they're workers at the zoo, to which she assigns them all these different roles like elephant keeper, penguin guy, etc. Then creates an emergency scenario to see how they deal with all the fictional stuff. And they're just doing these ridiculous things, and there's some decent gags in there. But then a customer comes in, and he's seeing them wrestling with imaginary animals, and Jeff's in the background being attacked by a bear. And Paul says, oh, there's a problem in the penguin pool. And this guy thinks they're all insane, and then he turns around and walks out. And Swiss gets a bit mad at this, and he goes, listen, woman, look at your...
He's a bit ticked off.
Crazy stuff. It's cost me a sale. Anyway, there's the trust exercise of catching people, which goes as badly as you'd expect.
Yeah.
But Jeff...
The phone rings and Jeff just wanders off.
Yeah. He goes, hey, yeah, it's Jeffo. No, I can't talk to you now. We're in a trust exercise. But whenever he answers the phone, usually it's a dodgy mate of his, and he goes, shut up, you nutter.
Yeah.
Anyhow, Swiss always seems to stuff up every exercise, and Linda makes him stand in the corner with a dunce cap on, which is important for later on. Yeah, and we've also zoomed past some bits where Swiss visits his estranged wife, Ruth, and after work, and he sort of complains about how badly all the troubleshooting's going.
You said, when you were talking about the exercises, you said how they were getting progressively stupider and stupider.
Yeah.
Is there some method to her madness? Like, is that a real thing?
It is madness. No, I don't know. No, she's just making them do a mixture of cliched stuff and
it's not that she is actually intentionally pushing them further and further to see what...
I couldn't quite work that out because it seems to make sense, but it doesn't seem to be very effective.
All right, we'll just roll with it for now.
Yeah, we're going to have to. Yeah, we've got no choice. And it's sort of, Swiss is on the couch with Ruth and things are already a bit tense, but he's telling her how bad the economy is going and the business is going. She goes, Swiss says, everyone in our row of shops is closing down, Laptop Land and Percy's Pet Palace and all these sorts of things, and we've really got to turn this around. And so there's that scene, and there's also a scene of Jeff visiting Ruth because she's having an affair with Jeff, but she called him around so they could talk about Swiss, and then that doesn't go particularly well because Jeff's not very good about talking about that sort of thing behind Swiss's back because he is Swiss's friend and all that sort of thing. So you get your more touching side of the show there.
But anyhow, did you... So the point was the failure of the businesses, which he's telling Ruth about, is the reason why he's got
her
Loopy Linda.
Loopy Linda in, exactly. He's got her in because he's got to do something to save the business. I mean, he's already gone from his beautiful big showroom to this crappy one.
Yep.
And it's all a bit too much for him, so he's desperately trying whatever he can. He's obviously rung up the cheapest business consultant he could find.
Yep.
Yeah.
She can't even afford a change of clothes.
No, that's right. You've pointed that out as well, yeah. So the meat of this episode is based on all the team changing their roles for a fortnight. So young Paul has to join the mechanics. Miranda becomes the car salesperson. Swiss has to be the receptionist. And Jeff, to his great joy, is put in charge of the showroom. And, so poor old Swiss is now completely powerless. And he's not a easy man at the best of times, but he's gone completely power mad at this point.
Would you say that these roles that she's selected for each of them is the absolute worst possible role that they could have been given?
Yeah.
Apart from Swiss, he seems to be competent.
Oh, yeah. No, he ends up enjoying it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Because Jeff, this whole time, has been complaining, we don't need a stupid troubleshooter, she's doing ridiculous stuff, and as soon as she puts him in charge of the showroom, he goes,
she's genius.
She's great. This mirrors what happened at the start, where he said he should be the one to show Swiss how everything should be done, so... Now he's got his shot. On the first day of the new regime, Swiss sort of gets in early to open up, and he sees Paul gaffer taped to a steel column. And the mechanics have put him through this initiation ceremony.
Who did this to you?
The mechanics. It's part of an initiation ceremony. Swiss, they frighten me. They make me read the Daily Star and smell their farts.
Right, phone boy, on your knees where you should be. What's happening to you, Paul?
God, how do you get oil out your eyes?
You got to cry it out. Takes about 48 hours. Get yourself a video of Titanic.
I don't want to be a mechanic anymore. All they do is talk about their sex lives.
You're lucky you're not part of their sex lives.
So as Swiss is getting Paul untied, Jeff marches in and starts telling them his plans to sort out the showroom with a bit of new decor to bring more women into the showroom. And then we cut to Jeff in the boss's office a bit later having a sales meeting with Miranda. And he starts off complimenting her on how professionally she's dressed in a smart women's business suit. And then he immediately turns that around and suggests she needs to undo a few jacket buttons to allure the customers with some cleavage. And he says, you have to sex it up or ship out. And Miranda's obviously not happy. She storms out, and then Swiss walks in. And Jeff says, phone boy, what have you got there? And he dumps some paperwork on Jeff saying, listen, the bank's onto us. You've got to cut costs, and the best way recommended to do it is to cut the workforce. And you've got to sack Paul.
You're going to sack Paul?
No, I'm not going to sack Paul. You are, sir.
I can't sack Paul. He's my mate. He's my PlayStation partner.
So Miranda's unhappy as well. Paul's very unhappy, and Jeff is stuck with paperwork big decisions, and he's also in the crappy office. I like when he's trying to make himself at home in the office. So that's a cool little scene where there's no dialogue and it's just him trying to get used to being in there.
He can't lean back because there's the bookshelf right behind him, and he can't open the drawer because there's another hanging into another cupboard. And
because he's quite a tall man, and he has to duck under that pipe, which is right at face level.
Yeah, but he does find a bottle of scotch, which makes his day. I think he can live with the rest of it because of that.
Oh, yeah. And meanwhile, though, Swiss has got his feet up at the reception desk reading a magazine, and he's got his pipe in his mouth, and he's smiling away. Oh, it's great. And he's just reveling in the fact that none of this is his problem. Anyway, Miranda complains to Swiss about Jeff's orders, and he sympathetically listens, and then says his new catchphrase, which is, "I'm so glad it's not my problem." We cut to after work, and Swiss is visiting Ruth again, but this time he's telling her how he feels so much better and all the stress has been lifted off his shoulders, and it's down to the role changing, and so Ruth jokingly suggests they should try some role changing, and it might have helped their marriage. Anyway, so they actually do this. Ruth takes full advantage, pretending to be Swiss, using all Swiss's chat-up lines and persuasion techniques, and while Swiss is a bit stunned, she manages to barrel him into the bedroom for some romance. The romance in this series is all very complicated. But at this point, we've got 4 minutes left in this episode. And this is where everything comes back round. So we go to a week or so later, and Miranda's trying to sell a car to a guy. And since the only role models Miranda's had are Jeff and Swiss Tony, who are sleazebags, she's trying to do all the laddie, blokey stuff. And it's not going particularly well with all the sexist banter. All right, mate, it's a lovely motor. It goes like something in heat or whatever. And a lot of other filthier lines.
Yep.
Anyway, the poor customer's a bit put off, and he legs it out of there. And Linda walks back in to see how the experiment went. So it's been 2 weeks now.
How's it going?
Fine. Miranda hasn't sold a single car. Paul replaced the oil in a very expensive BMW with Lucozade. And Jeff is currently hiding under his desk pretending to be an African. But luckily, it's absolutely nothing to do with me, as I am merely the receptionist.
Oh, no, I'm not going to get paid again, am I? It's just like Laptop Land and Percy's Pet Palace.
Why? What happened at Laptop Land?
I made the cleaner boss, and it didn't work out.
And don't tell me, in Percy's Pet Shop Palace, you locked all the staff into cages and put a chimpanzee in charge.
No, it was a talking parrot.
So it turns out that Linda the Troubleshooter hasn't successfully saved any businesses, and that's what happened to Laptop Land and Percy's Pet Palace. She drove them out of business with her crazy tactics, which is why she's so cheap to hire. So Swiss makes her put on the dunce cap and stand in the corner. So what happens in this little section here is everyone comes running to Swiss, expecting him to save everything, and he's just got his feet up going, "Oh, really? Oh, that's terrible." And he gets his justice, but he does it in ways that the writers have used all the things that the characters have done earlier in the show to get his revenge on them, and it's quite artful, really. So Jeff is saying he hasn't got the heart to sack Paul, and he doesn't want to be the boss anymore, and then Paul comes up, says he can't take being a mechanic anymore because 2 weeks in, they're still doing daily initiation rituals on him. And they've shaved his downstairs 3 times and filled his overalls with shaving cream. And Miranda joins in saying she can't sell cars. She just wants to go back to receptionist and, quote, do nothing all day. Swiss replies, "Oh, that's too bad. I found my ideal vocation as a receptionist." Then it pauses and he goes, "Not really."
Yep.
Which is one of Linda's catchphrases. Anyhow, he's having a dig at her. But then Swiss points out to them that Linda is in fact a genius for making them realise what he actually does there and his true worth as a boss. And he rubs it in all their faces, but of course they don't care because they're so happy to be back at their old jobs.
Yeah.
And that's the end, and we'll celebrate with a clip.
Let's get back to work. Miranda, you'll be needing these. Paul.
Yes.
Grow yourself some pubes and remove that sign from my door.
Aye, Captain.
Swiss, what are you going to do about sacking him?
Well, Jeff, if you'd actually bothered to read that paperwork that I showed you, it was from 3 years ago. Now, get your fat ass over there and slay me with your devastating wit.
Screw you, breath.
That's more like it. Linda?
Yes.
You are a genius. Have a certificate.
So with that done, I've got gags, right? So a highlight of this, at least for me, is the certificate scene.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool.
I do like that.
Yeah. We won't go over that again. And then when she's introducing herself, she goes, "I'm Linda and I'm an alcoholic." sort of ice breaking, and then she goes, not really, and she's just having a laugh. But then Jeff says, I'm Jeff Fowler, and I'm an alcoholic. And Linda says, no, we've done that one. And he goes, no, I really am.
Yeah.
And Simon Day's delivery is just brilliant.
But before we even get to that, she says, but I will be by the end of the week if it carries on like this.
Not really.
Not really.
I'll be fine. Now, I've not put in a lot of gags here because, and this show's actually quite timid for some of the crude gags. Swiss Tony is normally packed out with crude gags.
This episode, you mean?
This episode's surprisingly light on the crude gags.
Yeah.
So at a different point, she's saying, okay, women by the family car, you've got to make this showroom sort of more friendly for ladies and things because it smells like dirty socks and smelly something else's.
Yep.
Yeah, but they make that pay off as well. And Jeff says, no, Paul says, mine doesn't smell like that. And Jeff says, mine does.
Yeah.
And so I know I'm not doing it any justice in the delivery, but when it's on screen, it's bloody hilarious. And they do a lot of things like that, but we're not going to mention them in this podcast. Swiss keeps having to wear the dunce cap and stand in the corner. And when Jeff says something very similar, he gets a round of applause. And poor old Swiss is fuming at this.
Yeah, you can't believe it.
Now, I'll keep a few up my sleeve, but my favourite one, which the first time I watched it, I just cacked myself. And they're in the zoo scene, and Paul's very panicky because the girl's fallen into the penguin tank. And anyway, Jeff says, don't be stupid, Paul. Penguins don't eat little kids. It's the other way round.
Yeah.
What?
Paul doesn't question that.
I've never seen a little kid eat a penguin. You know little kids. Do they eat penguins?
No. I'm pretty sure we can say no.
All right. What have you got there?
Well, things I like, Linda.
Yep.
She is a bit bonkers, but I like the energy, and she just comes out with so many funny things. I like how when Swiss has taken the role of receptionist from Miranda, is that right?
Yep.
Yep. The next day he turns up and he's dressed down to a cardi.
Oh, I didn't notice. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so he's like kicked back.
It's casual Swiss.
Yeah. He's got his feet up, he's got his cardi on.
I wonder if he had slippers on when he had his feet up.
I've got my slippers on. One thing I found really funny is they talk about turning this showroom into a place that ladies would like to visit. And you would think that by then making Miranda the salesman, this would be a brilliant move because then you got a female salesman who can interact with ladies when they come through the doors.
This is all making sense.
Instead of leaning into that, she goes completely the opposite direction and takes on this bizarre male persona that she's learnt off the guys. Anyway, that made me laugh.
Yeah.
So at the end of all this, Tony thinks it's brilliant, not because it's actually built the business up in terms of dollars, but because the others have actually they've gained some respect for him.
Yeah, and he's back at the top of the totem pole instead of being the figure of fun.
Yeah. But, I mean, he still made a mess of this whole thing because he was the one dopey enough to hire this really cheap Linda.
Yeah.
Who was completely hopeless, so I don't know.
Well, he doesn't care about that. Self-image is everything to Swiss Tony, so as long as he's got some respect back and he's proved them all wrong and he's back on top, he doesn't care if the business is still actually failing.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because it's failing under his guidance and leadership, and he is Swiss Tony.
Yep.
No, that's my theory.
Okay. Yep, no, I could see that.
Because image is everything.
Yeah, and I just thought it was funny that he didn't actually improve the business at all than...
And he seems really happy about how it all turned out, but...
Yeah. You get the feeling that they're going to lose respect for him by the middle of next week or something like that anyway.
Very much so, yeah.
Things will just be back to equilibrium.
Yeah, in the great sitcom tradition, everything will go back to normal.
Yeah, and it does it?
Well, actually, by the end of the series, Swiss and Ruth are back together, and Jeff's back on his own in front of his TV, drinking, as he does every night, and Paul is going out on sort of a date with Miranda because he's been chasing her the whole series. And then in the very first episode of Swiss Tony, the first scene is them two walking in together after having stupidly and regrettably slept with each other the night before, which Paul's very pleased about, but Miranda's very unhappy about. And so that mirrors everything. So basically they start out one way and then they end the same way at the end of series 2. So yeah, it's very much like that.
But is it Ruth, his wife?
Yeah.
Why is she interested in Jeff?
She's got an incredibly small social circle, and Swiss Tony, I guess I can get into this in my wrap up.
All right.
So I hope I don't repeat myself later, but Swiss Tony is all facade, right? And all these things which might impress a young lass when they first got married, she's now realised all these years down the line that it's all sort of fake, and there's not much to him, and yet he doesn't pay attention to her because he still spends his whole life trying to be Swiss Tony, the car salesman. Whereas Jeff's on the opposite end of the spectrum. He is ultra genuine. He's incapable of trying to be anything that he's not.
Yep.
And I think she finds that honesty very refreshing. And plus, he's a big strapping man, even though he's not the world's most attractive man, and he's there, and they got hammered, and then, there's one thing led to another.
I think not having the background to...
Having watched it.
Yeah, having watched the rest of it, couldn't really conceive why
Yeah,
she
why
would prefer
she be
Jeff
doing
over Tony.
Yeah. So...
Because he doesn't seem to have his act together at all.
No. Right. What else have you got?
All I've got is a list of a few gags that I thought didn't work
Okay, cool.
so well.
Yep.
Okay, here's a list of gags that I thought were a bit questionable. The zoo.
No, I don't... Yeah, it's painful.
I'm kind of on board with the zoo
Yep.
up until the point where it becomes so obvious that a customer's about to walk through the door, and then thought it was so flagged what was coming up that
Yes.
that one fell over a bit. The line that Linda comes out with that leads to the sock
Yep.
gag, I guess. That was bad.
You're not expecting that crudity to come out, are you?
Well, I mean, there are crude jokes that go there, but they get paid off.
Yeah.
Like, in Blackadder 2, where where's the captain? It's a Tuesday.
He'll be up the old seat.
So that is so bad, but there's something about it that
Yeah, it works.
it gets you across the line. But that one, she didn't say it like a joke.
No, not at all. But I suppose that's not the joke. The joke is where Paul says, well, mine doesn't. And Jeff says, well, mine does.
And I can see that. I can see there's humour in that, but
Yeah.
oh my goodness.
That was the payoff for me. That was one of my favourite gags.
Well,
But
yeah.
the setup.
The setup was questionable.
Yeah, exactly. You just don't expect her to come out with a line like that, being so professional and everything, but there you go.
Yeah, well, she is professional, but also a loony, so I could kind of see it at the
Fair
same
enough.
time.
Right, now, I've got some stuff. How much
Yep.
stuff have you got?
Nothing more, really.
Well, if that's the last of your notes then, Steve, then
Yep.
I'll do my observations and then plead my case.
Yep.
So the observations are around revenge and bringing things back around at the end of the episode.
Yep.
In the last few moments where Swiss takes charge. After everything's gone to crap and Linda's revealed as a fraud, he says, here, have a certificate. Which I just loved that line, and it was perfectly delivered. And then he gives her the dunce cap and tells her to stand in the corner. And he follows that up with, right, let's celebrate, which is what Jeff's been saying the whole episode to avoid his duties.
Yep.
And just giving him an excuse to drink whenever he failed to do a really important thing as boss.
And like we've already said, he throws a not really in there too.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, he does. So Swiss, for once, gets his own back using all their own foibles against them, which is satisfying plot-wise, but it also lets them reuse a few good lines at the end. So I just thought that was nifty, the way they did that. As for why I think it should be in the Hall of Fame, the thing about this show, which you might not get in this episode, is that it's another sort of... I've put the word masterclass of human nature in here, but it's not necessarily... It's a crude masterclass, and what I mean is that every person has their flaws and good qualities that make up for the flaws. Like Jeff is this wreck of a man, but he's got no false front, and he knows himself absolutely, and he can sense other people as they are as well, because he knows who he is, which obviously Swiss Tony doesn't know who he is. And so that makes him a good salesman. And on the opposite side, as I mentioned before, is Swiss, who's 100% false front. And he's not Swiss for a start. He's a pretend sophisticate. He's not an expert on pleasing women.
Yep.
In fact, we find out he can't even drive, Steve. And his whole life is based around selling cars. Yeah.
For real?
Swiss can't drive, and Ruth has to give him driving lessons.
Oh my goodness.
And over the series, they build all this up. And Swiss can't read people at all, whereas Jeff can, because Swiss only has one selling line, and this is driving this car is very much like making love to a beautiful woman. Yeah. So this sitcom's sort of a blunt instrument of characterization, but what they achieve is up there with the finer examples like Dad's Army and The Office when it comes down to presenting this range of people, and that each of them has their human failings, but you can still like them. Nobody is better than anybody else. So in Dad's Army, right, Captain Manring's an upstanding chap, and he does bring everyone together and save the town, but he is unbearably pompous and obsessed with keeping up a good appearance. That's like sort of Swiss Tony in this one. Whereas Private Walker is dodgy as hell, but he's ultra loyal and has a heart of gold.
Yep.
And so they're both very flawed people, but they have these great qualities. And I know it's sacrilege to compare Dad's Army to Swiss Tony, but I've gone there. Yeah, exactly.
That'll draw some hate.
Yeah, so this Swiss Tony series does the same sort of thing, man. We've missed out on how good the portrayal of Ruth is. So she's criminally underused in this episode. But I think you might have got a sense of how good she is in this episode, in the series overall. Yeah. And her relationship with both Swiss and Jeff is reflective of the series as a whole, because when you're not doing episodes like this, which was based around the showroom, it's actually a lot more based on romance and relationships, which you don't get a sense of in this one. Yeah, and that's where all the great character moments emerge, because they're genuine characters, and I like examples of sitcoms that can do genuine rather than the ones I've complained about in the past, where you've got these characters who are wacky and they've got beautifully crafted, really fast banter, but, you know, I'd sort of rather have genuine. And in a nutshell, I can't believe they made 2 series of a sitcom based on a questionable sketch show character.
Yeah.
And they've actually made quite a decent sitcom out of a crappy premise as a used car salesman. So straight away it gives you that impression that, oh, this is going to be awful. And also this episode's got that good appearance from Olivia Colman, and it solved that mystery. So, yeah, no, I thought it was quite good, and I just want to share it with people.
Well, I agree with you on many points, and particularly the one about the plot and the way that everything comes together at the end. And Swiss has got his revenge on them all. I can see how he uses all of their own lines and everything against them. So I really like that.
Yeah.
I liked a lot of it. There were those couple of gags I mentioned that I felt probably aren't putting it in the Hall of Fame.
No.
So probably not a 5 out of 5, but I'm saying it's probably more like a 3 or 4. Thinking somewhere around there.
No, we're totally due for one not to go in, and I honestly did not expect it to go in.
What?
I thought there's going to be a miracle here if it does, but to me, this is a 5 out of 5 for this series. It's pretty good. But yeah.
So you say this is the best episode out of the lot, or is it
For
just
me,
the cleanest one we can find? Or
well, yeah, cleanest not only in that way, but also in self-contained way. So you don't need to know what's been happening too much in the other episodes.
Yep.
Where if you watched a different episode from Swiss Tony, you would need to know stuff that's gone before
because of the relationship.
Yeah. And because you've got this new character coming in, and they literally have to introduce themselves and who they are. This is the first one I ever watched, and so because it's got them all introducing themselves, it made it easy to latch onto.
There's probably a little bit of genius to that, to starting the
Series
first
2.
episode of your new series by introducing the characters in a plausible way.
Yeah. So Swiss Tony strikes out, but that's okay. And then we'll be back next time, of course, with your choice.
All right, well, thanks for joining us, everyone, for Swiss Tony. Hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you again in a fortnight. See ya.
Cheers. Join us next time on Sitcom Showdown, when we'll be putting another 5-star episode under the microscope. And in the meantime, you can contact us with feedback on Facebook, Twitter @Sitcom Showdown, or by email sitcomshowdown@gmail.com.